Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. This time we are talking with Chad Gerber, a patented futurist, founder and creator of Meloscene, platinum-selling artist, and has a passion for innovation. As you can see, we've already been chatting just a little bit, so this interview is going to be fun. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Breathe.
Whew. I'm here. I'm present.
So,
I'm mentally present. I'm here.
Yes. Well, the last little bit of the intro there I kind of messed up was like, you have a passion for innovation, which is perfect for this show. Thank you for joining on the Polymath podcast. Please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hello, innovators and people who are psychotic that want to pursue this life. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Breathe. Deep breath.
Hello and welcome to the Polymath podcast.
So one question that I actually have before all the regular questions, it's kind of like the icebreaker that I don't send to you beforehand, is I like to ask you to share something about yourself that no one knows about you. Speaking of weird questions.
Oh, gosh, that's ridiculously hard because people know nothing about me. I keep it very hidden. Very hidden. I have horrible sleep problems. How about that? Well, a lot of people know that. Let's see.
Well, it doesn't have to be like no one knows, but
I mean,
the sleep problem seems pretty crazy.
I like to lay down in the shower. I do my best thinking in the shower. That's another one.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. Well, how deep do we want to go here? I forget to cut my toenails, and then I have to do that. Is that too deep?
Yeah,
too personal.
It's not too deep. I think the first answer was probably the deepest. Like, oh, I have terrible sleep problems, and then you just skipped right past that.
Oh, that was good enough.
Like, oh yeah, I just don't sleep. I'm a vampire.
Horrible sleep problems. Horrible sleep problems.
Are you more of a night owl and just can't sleep as much, or is it just more along the lines of like you have like nightmares? What's going on?
All the above, man. Like one of the problems is that once you get kind of like a creative flow going or an idea, it'll last for just weeks on end. So usually, I gotten better at it now. Like now I'm more balanced and health regimes, and that helps a little bit. But basically, if stuff's going on and I'm working on things, I think I maxed out, and this is I drew the line, but I maxed out like 3 weeks of not sleeping because I was working on scoring a TV show. Wow. And I just could not shut it off. And so after that, it was kind of when I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. Otherwise, I'm just going to keel over dead. So my sleep is still pretty terrible. I mean, the other problem is that it never shuts off. So like, it's so stupid. But do you remember that Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, the really questionable one? That coffin he sleeps in is what I wish I had, because I can hear the cat down the street. I can hear doors
sensory
cutting.
overload.
I can hear planes. Like it does not. So I sleep at night with sometimes 2 sets of earplugs, headphones, earplugs, rain machines, everything to just try to like drown out the noise. And then it's still like a hit or miss if I'm going to sleep.
Do you... I can generally like drown out sounds depending if there's like an air going or something like that, but when it comes to like lights, and if there's a light on my monitor or coming from my mic or something like that, it'll just keep me up.
I wear the like weighted eye mask. But I'm basically like I just wish I was in a coffin. I think if I had a coffin, a soundproof coffin, not only would I sleep better, I mean, I would probably die of asphyxiation, but if I had airflow of some kind, I would probably get my best sleep in a coffin, which is that's really foreshadowing, isn't it? Let's take a moment on that one, right?
Final nail, right?
Final, right? Rest in peace. There it is.
Well, a few things that came to mind when you were saying that was magnesium glycosinate is something that people take a lot to kind of quiet their mind. And I don't know if you've taken that or not, but
I have.
I just noticed. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I did take I was prescribed a while ago the really heavy sleep medications, right? And I took it a couple times, and that was a disaster because I took it on a Friday night, and I had to get back in the studio. Like after a session on Friday night, I was back in the studio on Monday, and I slept. I kid you not, I slept from Friday to Sunday mostly, and then by Monday evening, it was finally starting to feel normal again. And that was like just a regular dose of whatever Ambien or something. So I was like, I'll never do it. I can't.
You needed to catch up kind of thing. And not having sleep is dangerous, obviously, too. But I do understand. I think partially this show, like people listening in on the show, probably understand too, having that
Yeah.
hyperfixation where you're just so
Yeah.
consumed by something. I actually
yeah.
last month I was really fixated on building out a newer version of my second brain. So I switched from Notion to Obsidian, which are these productivity tools.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating because you can have all these notes locally on your computer. They all link together. So I was sitting there I had to manually transfer from Notion, and I had a couple thousand documents that I had to move over by hand. And it's just one of those things where I could not sleep.
Nightmare.
Oh, it was, but I had to do it. Like I could not sleep otherwise. I was like,
Like I try to like dump notes. That's the other thing now is like, I try to like, you know, if I got something going on, I try to just get it written down or what, I don't know, just to be honest, there's a million things I do and none of them really work that great, but all of them together kind of help. And that's good enough. The biggest one was, exercise is a big one. I had to incorporate that very, very, very like, militant schedule, like, you know, but yeah, I mean, it's accepting the fact that I do need sleep or I'm going to fall over. And on top of it, it's not a big deal if I'm bad at it. Because there's other things everyone's bad at and have other health problems. So if sleep is like my big thing, you know, I'm not going to stress about it too much as long as I keep trying. Kind of thing.
Well, the more you stress yourself out, the harder it will be to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to just give yourself some leeway.
That is the serious thing. Because I used to lay there, and I've had this since I was a little kid. Like when I was a little kid, the family would be asleep, and I'd be in the bedroom in the middle of the night playing with toys, like just up all night, and then finally fall asleep, and then 5 minutes later, someone's waking me up for school. And like, I just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, as long as I can function and not draw attention to it, it's all good. It's worked out really good on like tour and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's just more about casually not giving up on trying to figure it out before you just keel over dead.
When I was a kid, I was rearranging my room 10 million times at 2 a.m.
Oh yeah, so you know.
Yeah.
It's wild. Good for you.
Getting into the questions here. What was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
Oh my gosh, I had a complete, I would say, complete rewiring and overhaul of how I do everything neurologically, and I'm not entirely sure what took place, but basically, I was going into the whole pandemic thing. I've always had, you know, music, creativity, and all this stuff, and then all the innovative technology and weird things that I fantasize about and want to fix. That's always been over here. It was never really possible. Until I guess mobile chipsets finally happened and work. So it's still never allowed. Then going into the pandemic, what happens? I lost these really big tours and stuff like in Brazil and Europe and whatever, and all of the music industry was just gone. And I was like, well, maybe I should take a moment to look at these other things that I've always wanted to pursue. And then what happened was, like in music, if you want to make something, if you're scoring or making an album or whatever, you might want to tackle a certain thing. You have to kind of learn the ins and outs of that particular production or whatever it is. And it's the same with this. I was like, okay, I need a better understanding of like molecular, you know, biology or quantum physics or whatever. What I found is like, I was soaking it up just like I would with music for the first time. And I think I don't know really why, but it might've been because my brain was finally like, allowed and permitted to do that. And then it took a while, but basically I just read hundreds of books, hundreds of college textbooks, any books I could get my hand on physics and finance and business. And
I get you.
Exactly. Like it was weird because before, if I had that hunger, it was like music, more music. I'm going to grab this instrument, play this instrument, but that was shelved. So then all of a sudden it was like this other side of my brain that had been sleeping was turned on. And then speaking of not being able to sleep, I had to really fight to balance. But then what I found is like, it was just waiting to like be allowed to play. And so for I'd say the first year, going into like the pandemic and all that, my brain would like physically hurt, like headache kind of stuff, but I just could not stop downloading. I felt like Neo in the Matrix. I could not get enough information. It's still a little bit like that, but now I have applicable things for all the information. But that was the biggest overhaul of my life because I've always just had this kind of creative, artistic brain and musical and whatever. But then all of a sudden I'm finding myself just deep into like physics and how the applications of these different types of physics will work together to do this and this. And so it was overwhelming, actually. Like, it was very overwhelming to experience, because I had never had that
At least the
before.
burnout. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and just even the fact of like, I'd be doing like washing a dish or something, right? And just I would just be somewhere else. Like, it was like I was watching things taking place from somewhere else. It was just bizarre. It was like, I felt almost out of body at times. And it was like it was a while of this, and then it finally kind of like balanced itself out. But yeah, that's where it was. So I guess that's about 5
That's
years ago,
interesting.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, well, the timeline doesn't really matter. It's more of a prompt to get you thinking about it. And the thing is, one thing that I've always really noticed is that I love learning that kind of thing, having that input. And I've definitely been in those cases, maybe not as to the degree of you, but I've had those information overload moments. And I'm kind of getting to that point now where I'm just downloading articles for my second brain like crazy. So it's been too much.
Yeah.
But my point is, there is these cycles where you go input and output. Absolutely. And if you go too long without going to the other side, it can lead to this overload.
Pop. Yeah. You almost
I did the opposite. I popped actually with my output. I did too much output, not enough input. Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah.
And then, do you know the book Range?
What is it? Range?
Range, yeah, by David Epstein.
I don't think so.
So it is about generalists, people who do many different things, sort of like Polymath in a way. But the thing is, he talks about how, I kind of call it the hourglass shape. So he talks about it in the book. I'll explain it my way. It's where you have kind of a wide dabbling, where you're trying many different things, and you're spreading yourself out, kind of jack of all trades approach, and then you find something that sticks. And you narrow down and hone in on that, and you get to that middle of the hourglass where the sand goes through. And then you eventually get to a point where you spread out again. And so it kind of goes into this cycle of repeating, where at some points you're wide, some points you're focused and narrow. And I think that, like, when you got that hyper-focused, you were in that narrow point. And then now you're kind of getting to that point of width, which is perfect that you're coming on the show, obviously, too.
Yeah. Like, it basically, and that's exactly... That makes perfect sense. Like, I kept viewing it as I had been, I equated music in my entire music career as I have been working with a box of crayons for most of my career. And now all of a sudden I was allowed into a room with virtually every brush and paint and color known ever. And I was given access to that. So then all of a sudden I found myself being like, man, I've been doing music for so long and my palette was just crayons. And now I get whatever I want. And then it's just like, what can I do with that? And then it was applying to things I've always wanted to do. They were ridiculous back in the day, and now they're not. So it's like just the timing of it. Even, if I was born 30 years sooner, I would be completely irrelevant but now it's like, oh, this fits here to this. It's like everything turned into Legos down to like the molecular level of what I needed to do. And that was like, I just never needed it before. It was a fantasy. Like, I'd literally be on planes traveling to somewhere to do music, and I'd be thinking about, it'd be really cool if I could do this and do this, merge this and do this. But whatever, I should probably get back to this MP3 I'm listening to learn these parts and stuff like that. Like, it just didn't matter. But then all of a sudden I was given that, and then everything was a color, everything was a paintbrush, everything was applicable to everything that I wanted to do. So yeah, it was like that creative input output just exploded. And before, it was a creative input output of predominantly crayons.
Well, and at that point you have to dabble, you have to try out all the different instruments and tools, because you don't know which ones will stick. In that book about Range, he talks about Roger Federer, the famous tennis player, and people know him as a tennis player, but the thing is, he had tried everything from wrestling to golf, and like, I don't even remember all the sports he had done, even basketball too. And I think he actually got really good at wrestling. He almost continued down that path, but he didn't really care for it as much. Crazy, and it wasn't until he really got into tennis. Like, he tried at tennis and it finally stuck with him. And after trying 12 different sports, he stuck with that one because he dabbled and found out the one he liked the most.
It clicked. He got it. And that's honestly what's crazy is that this new, I guess. I mean, again, it never mattered until now. Like, when I was a kid, I'd prototype and make garbage, that nobody cared about. It wasn't a thing. It was fun. But all of a sudden now it's like, it feels like when I first started music, and the industry was different too. It wasn't so formulaic as it is now. So it's a little bit trickier in that regard, but where I'm at now with the stuff that I'm doing, it feels very, very punk rock and roll. It's a culture and community of people just trying stuff and failure is absolutely welcome, because that is this environment. It's like, let's try something hard. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else then. Whereas music used to be that. And now it's like, this is the formula. This is how we're going to do it. It has to sound like this. So yeah, all of a sudden I found myself being more creatively fulfilled than doing music, or at least a different completely new type of being fulfilled, you know? So yeah, it was weird.
I'm not sure if I get that though. I'm not sure if you'll agree or not, but there's these rise of all these AI tools, and I find that I think a lot of them are really cool to help accelerate the process of certain maybe annoying parts of it, like whether it's mastering or coming up with ideas or beats, and then you could take that and step further your own way. A lot of artists feel like they're getting like quote unquote replaced, but I find that they're more of an accelerant, they're more of a tool to help you speed up the process.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So I'm speaking in DC in September on AI and this sort of what's going on with it. So like, the funny thing is, I was literally I was at a thing last week because it's LA Tech Week, and somebody at Google was talking about AI, and nobody is talking about, people want to know the bad stuff because they're afraid. And I get it 100%. And I will say, depending on who you are, you should be very afraid, because this has happened before and it's going to happen again. But the easiest way to digest it is that there was a time when you had 50 farmers digging holes on a property, and they were really good at digging those holes. And then one day somebody brought a tractor there, and all the farmers, some of them said, "How dare you? You're going to ruin everything." And then the other farmers said, "Can I try driving it?" And the ones who were refusing to adapt, who knows what happened to them? Like, they vanished. The farmers who wanted to use a machine, they found that I'm a good farmer, not a good digger. I'm a good farmer. And I'm using these tools to really be good at this. So we're about to see a massive layoff of people and a massive hiring of people. So where the people go that refuse to adapt and accept these tools and the inevitable innovation that happens being a human being, those are the people who need to see, they're freaking out, then they should be freaking out, because they will be unemployed unless they step back and look at the tools and go, okay, how can I be good with the tools? But this is not remotely new. This happens every 100, 120 years. And there's always people freaking out. And the people who just step back and go, okay, I can either freak out and be unemployed or just suck it up and see what I can do with it, they'll be fine. But it happens. We've been here.
Yeah.
You know,
every 100 years, but even every decade as well at some points too.
Absolutely.
Social media came out about a decade ago too, you know, and people didn't adapt for a while.
No. And that's it. I get it. I get it. People, we like being comfortable. We like to be little hobbits in our hobbit hole, right? Like, we don't want to do things because we're comfortable. But if that is your state of mind, and I'm not remotely knocking you for it, I get it. But you will be replaced. You will hit a wall. That's the human condition. That's just how it is, you know?
Yeah. I got 2 points actually I wanted to bring up to this, because I was watching an interview recently from Tom Bilyeu's show, Impact Theory, where he's talking to Peter Diamandis and Salim, two people who are well knowledgeable in the future of technology.
Yeah.
And they're talking about AI. And Tom had this quote, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he said. He was saying the people who are willing to try out these new tools and adapt to them and use them are going to be the ones that are going to accelerate and make a lot of change and be successful, versus the ones who rebel against it and say, I'm not going to use this tool. Kind of like what you're saying there.
Yeah. And again, it's happened before. The combustion engine, people take that. There's like, okay, the combustion engine and its adaptability, how it got refined and smaller, is why we have planes, right? Because a giant combustion engine didn't work. But as they got smaller and smaller, one day the Wright brothers were like, hey, let's stick this on a thing and see what we can do here. But then all of a sudden, you know, what do you have? Transportation people and train conductors freaking out. Like, it's inevitable. And there's obviously people are going to go buck wild with AI and like, let's make AI coffee. Let's do, I mean, it's going to calm down. But the biggest thing is to just, especially coming from a world of art and creativity, is that you have to know what you're up against. And it's just no different. I mean, I've recorded on tape. I've recorded on ADAT tapes and all that, and then digital stuff. And the old school people are all like, you can't, you know, it's just like, it's good to know how to do the old stuff. I guess it's good to new stuff. Cool. Just find out what supplements your voice, what gets your voice and connection to the people. If we're in this for people and connectivity and helping each other, then you need to use the tools that are going to help that happen. Otherwise, you are one of the 50 farmers digging a freaking hole and you're feeding half the village when you could be feeding all the villages because you're using a tractor. You know, it's like a mentality shift, but it happens. You're right. It happens like every 10 years. And we're hitting one of the big ones, which is this whole, you know, and that I'm putting AI in our platform. Like our AI system is going into the platform that will supplement creativity. And that's just, we're here. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to use AI in my second brain, so I get it. Let's go to the next question here. What got you into synthwave and music in general, I guess?
Oh man, synthwave is a freaking addiction. That's an addiction, dude. So like, I got into music because I found it was the only thing that would calm my brain and focus my brain as a kid. My parents made me take guitar lessons when I was like 7 or 8, classical guitar. But it's more of like this is what you do. It's not a career choice. This is just good for your mind or whatever. But I found that my brain just like latched onto it. And I decided at an early age, I was just like, I want to do this forever. It just was medicine for my mind. And everything chaotic about my mind fed the music. And then it just, you know, kept, you know, looping on itself. The synthwave thing, I don't know what in the world happened with that. Because like,
I'm glad you did, but like,
dude, like, because like, okay, I guess there's probably 2 things. I was on a tour and I was at this festival and somebody was playing a Gorillaz track and something clicked in my brain. I was like, I like where that's going. And then I just liked the sound. I like arpeggiated synthesizers a lot. Again, it helps my brain relax. But then I think it was Stranger Things. I knew that when Stranger Things came out that I would be allowed to do that music without it just being labeled as 80s music. Because anytime I'd put synthesizers or anything I was working on, people were like, it's like an 80s song. I'd be like, no, it's just the synthesizer. Once Stranger Things came out, then the show I was scoring, I was like, this is the sound. We're going to be allowed to do this now. It's okay to, it's not 80s now. It's just synthwave or retro. And then I just drank the Kool-Aid and I couldn't stop making it. The sounds are just nostalgic. I don't know what it is about it. I love it. And then Cyberwave, when I kind of had this kickoff of just absorbing a bunch of stuff, I'm sure you are well aware of biohacking. I found that if I put on arpeggiated music at a certain BPM, it would just lock my brain in. And one of the biggest discoveries I had, again, in that little window that you had asked about earlier, is that I had been learning too slow for forever. Like nothing stuck. I struggled to learn certain things because it sounds stupid, but I was learning too slow. So I found that if I put on arpeggiated like Cyberwave, which is just nuts, like it locked my brain in and I'd have to speed read and read a lot faster and do things faster, but it all synced up. So it became this relationship of like biohacking and it just gets me going because it's just so wild.
Oh yeah, you know? I seem to recall listening to synthwave even before Stranger Things came out, but I know that it got a lot more popular obviously afterwards, and both synthwave and cyberwave, and there was even another sub-genre that I listened to. I don't remember exactly what it was, like retrowave, I guess, probably. I don't know, but it was something that was really cool.
Yeah.
And back to the whole sleep thing. One of the things I was going to go on a tangent about is the idea of binaural beats and the brainwave that you're on. When you're laying in a shower or laying down in bed about to go to sleep, you're getting into that alpha wave state, which is the more creative one. I'm kind of more explaining for the audience here. Yeah. But I think that you are able to get into that state as well when you're listening to music and that focused. And we talked about this before the show, but speeding up video and also like speed reading too. Now you mentioned, it's like, yeah, definitely understand that.
Yeah, like I never thought that some humans learn at a slower speed, some faster. It doesn't make anything better or worse. I just found that all those years of teachers or whatever being like, you know, in 1706, but had it been faster, I would have been like, but the problem is that I couldn't lock into it, you know? So like in the last probably 5 years, it finally clicked. I was like, if I do everything at like higher speeds, then it sticks, you know, who knew?
Yeah, I knew, right? Well, and it's funny because I took a math course that was like digital back in high school. So this is like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it was extremely slow. And I didn't really know about speeding up videos yet, but I'm not even sure if I was going to be able to because of the confinements of the learning management system they used. But then after I left high school, I spent this whole like many years pursuing my own do-it-yourself education.
Mhm.
And I learned about speeding up videos, and I went from not being able to understand hardly any math in these digital courses
Right.
to teaching myself calculus because I was able to speed things up. And while I may not know a whole bunch of calculus now, because it's been years since then, the fact that I was able to get into that and learn how to find a derivative within a week, I think is a pretty big deal, because it was all because of speeding things up.
Absolutely. The other thing that I've noticed is, so I have this weird thing where I remember faces forever, like forever, ever. I can remember faces. Can't remember names, but I'll remember a face for the rest of my life. And so I found that if I do need to remember people, like 100 people or whatever, I can put them into a video, and I just go through and I just need to say their name. But they could be like, it could literally be like, Dustin, Bob, Jim, Steve, whatever. And then I play that video through, and you can do it fast or whatever. But it syncs up. Biohacking. It's just there's so many options for sort of like biohacking techniques, but our traditional way
and all that.
Right. It's always been like the teacher talks to your face, and then you do the thing, and then nobody can figure out why the majority of people struggle to learn. I'm like, we're in a time when we literally should all be learning how we, if anything, be assessed on what it is your learning style is, and then proceed. But yeah, dude, it's a thing. Same with the binaural beat, like all that stuff.
And I'm sure we can keep going down that, but there's a lot of questions I want to make sure I get to here. How did you get your name Woodrow while on tour in the U.S.? Quick question, I guess.
That is so stupid, man. I was I was brought down. The nickname's really stupid. I was brought down to Dallas to play in this hip hop group and go on like a tour, right? So they brought me in as the guitarist, and you're on the road forever. And they kept talking about how my teeth look fake because they're just too straight. That's what they're saying. These guys were nuts. They're really funny, and they just would pick the most random things. But they were like, this guy's teeth are so straight, they look wooden. And then they were like, their whole joke was like that one president, Woodrow Wilson. And I was like, you mean George Washington? And they're like, I think it's Woodrow Wilson. I was like, all right. So like, what do we call him, Woodrow? And so I was like, okay, I guess we'll just that's how. And then my first like national release that came out under a label. In the credits they credited me as Woodrow, so I was like, I'll just put that as my electronic name. It's kind of like a tip of the hat. I mean, the guys they're funny, they were cool guys, but that's pretty much it. As apparently my teeth look like fake wooden teeth. Woodrow.
Well, at least you have nice straight teeth. That's good.
I suppose.
Yeah, it's funny because like nicknames and like usernames, they kind of come so randomly. We talked kind of almost about synchronicity earlier. Just small little tangent. I was playing a Digimon game back when I was like a teenager.
I love Digimon. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It was Digimon World 4 on the GameCube, but I think I had the PS2 version. And you chose whichever starter you wanted, and I chose Vmon because that was one of my favorites. And it was funny because you could change the name. Like, it had a little cycle of the alphabet, and then you just had to keep going through each letter. And I guess I accidentally changed a V to a Z. And then I accidentally deleted the N. So instead of Vmon, it was Zemo. And then that Zemo just stuck with me. I kept it. And I used that as my gaming title for like the longest time for username, which I mean, people probably can find me that way. So like that, but like
my first digital name was Fishforks. And I don't have a clue why. I needed to sign up for something, and I just was like Fishforks. And then forever people like, we're playing games or whatever. Like, so what's Fishforks mean? I'm like, I have no idea. I like the two F's in it, I guess. But yeah, it sticks with you forever. Like, you will forever have that name long after you're dead.
Well, and now PolyInnovator is my name, but it's just, it's one of those things where names are interesting. Speaking of names and alter egos, PolyInnovator being kind of my alter ego, having an underground alter ego is something I find interesting. Obviously, we just talked about it, and while it has to do with music artists or hackers, what are your thoughts on the concept of having these alter egos? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I don't think it's anything new, to be honest with you. I think everybody has their like family given names, and names are cool and amazing. But I mean, how cool are nicknames, especially if they're given to you by friends or whatever? It's like, I don't know. I feel like there's it's obviously it's a psychological thing, but it's a bonding thing. It's a culture you belong to kind of thing. And it just kind of like makes you feel good. So like if I'm out and about and I'm doing music stuff and somebody's just calls me Woodrow, it makes me feel good. Like, it's like me, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like your real you for that particular thing. So I love giving people nicknames, and and I think obviously it's been going on forever. Like I grew up near a reservation, and my buddy, I was always jealous because they had the coolest names in the world, but that was like their name. Like they were named
Mhm.
in the tribe. Essentially, in our culture, it's a nickname, but in their culture,
Mhm.
that is now their name. So like his last name was like Black Feather, Black Eagle Feather. Anyways, it's like cool names, right? But in their
Mhm.
culture, that is your name now. Like you have been named. But
Bestowed upon it. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like yeah. So I think it's funny that you bring that up because I think about names a lot. The meaning of
Mhm.
names, how that changes your trajectory as a human being. The fact that my name is Chad and you're either just a absolute jerk or nice. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's
both.
weird.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, but yeah, I think about that too. Like just the power of names. You know what I mean? Like if you name somebody a really weird name. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I came up with PolyInnovator because of that. I wanted to be known as this polymathic person. I didn't want to straight up call myself a polymath because that's
Right.
egotistical from what people say.
Right.
But I also wanted to work in innovation. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, polymath innovation, PolyInnovator, boom. It took me a while to get that refined. It took multiple iterations and whatnot. But again, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think polymath will be allowed very much so in the next 10 years. I think it'll be a very common term that will not have any negative connotation. But I think in like 10 years, like what the thing that I'm making with this whole Meloscene thing is very
Mhm.
much to facilitate the new renaissance of polymath artists. So like now, yes, we have to dance around it if people, they think we're trying to be Da Vinci or something. But I think in like we're almost there to where people it's going to be common and you won't get judged.
So right now, there's a few different terms: generalist, jack of all trades, polymath,
Yeah.
multipotentialite. They're all getting thrown around. And while like multipotentialites and generalist are actually starting to, there's a couple movements going on
Mhm.
now that are kind of building up those terms. But jack of all trades is still connotated with the whole master of none idea, despite the fact that it continues, but oftentimes better than master one. Polymath being kind of like the Da Vinci, like you said. Again, people kind of connotate that with like ego. But again,
Right.
with the Web3 renaissance or this digital age kind of
Yeah.
thing, like you're saying, it's going to get better and better.
It'll get better and better, especially because, and like a lot of people are doing their different things that are all heading in the same direction. But like, for instance, with Meloscene, since I am incorporating elements of AI and these supplemental things, what it's doing is allowing for people that are weak in one art and strong in another to kind of bridge the gap to create cohesive artistic endeavors. So like if you're not great at, maybe even in music, maybe you're not good at beats, the AI can help you. Or maybe if you need some designs to go along with your music or vice versa, AI can kind of facilitate it. So it's not so much like it's just doing it, it's allowing you to really pull from your different creative things to where as this continues, people are like, oh, what are you a musician? Are you an animator? What are you? And people are going to say,
Yes.
all of it? Yes, right. So yeah, so either they're going to come up with a new term or it is just going to be, I'm a polymath artist. We'll see. But that's basically where we're headed.
Yeah.
We're technically already there. I mean, people who are artists and have gallery paintings and stuff, they're already using supplemental tools. So like, I think in 10 years maximum, I think that it'll be a complete normal thing and it won't have a Da Vinci snobbery to it,
Yeah.
I hope anyways. Otherwise I'd come with a different name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But so I consider myself a singer, for example, self-taught. But I've always I had it on both sides of my family bloodline. But I've been trying to learn DAWs, like regardless if it's Ableton or even Reaper, whatever one I could try to learn from. But I haven't been able to figure out how to make music yet. I got a MIDI keyboard in the closet even too. Like I'm trying to get to that point. But at this point, I want to just cover stuff and just get some out there so people can hear it. But I don't know how to get going with that. So maybe Meloscene can help me with that. It's set to be the next era of the music industry, as you say. What do you aim to achieve with it more so than what you just described?
So the real foundational piece is I want to actually connect human beings authentically inside of a space that's not dependent upon physical location. So for the first time in history, I want someone who is a guitar player and they need a singer who is in Tokyo and a bass player in Germany. And we're going to make music for the first time in history where you are pulling from the planet to be a part of your project in the same space together versus just finding bandmates or other artists within an 8-mile radius of you. So that's like the main piece is like, I want to facilitate, reconnect people. So we're not just fragmented sending out MP3s and stuff to each other. The other one is that I want to combat the mental health epidemic, especially in the United States. since the majority of people are completely alone and disconnected. They can be in chat groups all day long, but everybody feels cut off. Whereas this gives people the ability to go into this space one-on-one, a group of people, whatever. And whether it be we're kicking around music ideas and stuff, or we're just hanging out, the idea is that nobody has to be alone. So you might not have anybody in your own community you connect with. You're an outcast. You will have somebody in here. And it's no different than before the internet got super weird. People could go to a chat room or something and just find people they connected with. This is just taking it, 50 steps further. And we're using music, creativity, and art the same way it has always existed around a campfire back in the day with people making music and, making beats with sticks. So we're using that as like step one, but it's to kind of reintroduce authentic, real connection between humans across the globe, and trying to repair a lot of this damage that I feel has happened from social media. Honestly, it's a weirdly disconnected experience. So this place is not a place of posting your cat videos or your TikTok trying to like show the best you. If you want to be a troll, you have to do it face to face, and you have to be prepared for people that are going to come in and kick you out. Like, I want to reintroduce that. It's raw, and it's like, and obviously there's safety things in place so that people can't go crazy, but it's the equivalent of an after school, like people used to make a rock band or whatever in their garage, and that is over. This is reintroducing that again, whether it be you all just want to make art together or beats or not, but just you have space so we can begin this new kind of building block towards reconnecting people, and this time actually globally. But there's not going to be an ad in your face or a political, viral video being shoved down your throat. Like, this is for people to connect with actual people outside of the noise, essentially.
What are some of your thoughts on like such things as latency or monetization, that kind of thing, those kind of issues as a business?
So there's going to be a whole bunch. It's a freemium model, but there's also subscription based. There's different tiers that go into the platform, right? So if you want to come in and you just want to do the freemium model, you're good. Have fun. You don't even need to have the device if you just want to be a fan and just hang out. If you want to be an artist, you have to buy the hardware, obviously, to plug in your gear and to be able to connect into the space, a cello or whatever. The monetization is huge because I want artists to be able to make a living in here. So even if you are, let's say you're a violin player and you live in Kansas City, you're going to struggle to make a living outside in the real world just because of how, especially in the United States, how we treat music, and streaming rates are absurd. But in here, what you can do is you can monetize your space, whether you're performing, producing, whatever. You can decide how you want to monetize it, and you can release the music inside of Meloscene or out in the world on streaming platforms, but you get to decide how you want to monetize. So maybe you want to make a track, maybe you want to throw a party in your space and you want to DJ it. Maybe it's $5 at the door. Obviously, the platform will take a small percentage of the transactions, but it's between you and your community. So now what happens if you have like a violinist, they don't need 50 million fans to fund them. And even so, through streaming, you're barely going to be funded. And here, you need a few hundred fans, and you can make a living. Like, now you're making a living off of what you're doing. Now you're being booked to other projects inside the platform where you're going to their studio space and recording violins. So it blows the doors open on musicians and creatives being able to actually make money again without third-party entities getting in the way. And that's the whole entire point. Without that, the whole entire platform is just garbage. So podcasters are included in that as well. Podcasters come in, they can actually have a studio audience that participates if they want, but it's a situation where everybody's in charge of their own monetization destiny, how they see fit. And then they can actually have funding coming in from their fragmented audiences across the planet. They can actually now be a part of it because it doesn't matter where you live. So there's a bunch of tiers to it, but it's up to the artist what they want.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Right now we're using Riverside, which is one of the best platforms right now for any kind of audio or video recording.
Oh, latency, I didn't answer.
Sorry. It's good, but I feel like you're taking it to the next level. But latency, yes.
Yeah, so latency, it's proprietary information, but I figured out a way to do ultra low latency that allows for people to reference each other when we're doing music in the studio. And we've done plenty of this, and I think you might have saw we just featured on the BBC last month where we did like a session between a few different countries. But what we do is we prioritize the reference audio, and then the lossless audio is, I guess you could say, buffering in a way that does not plug up the bandwidth. So we have ultra low latency. Like even right now as we're talking, we're using low quality audio, but what is being captured and and housed is good. So it's a dance of that and a few other things. And then of course the AI element sort of like polishes off all of that. But artists and people using the platform, they don't have to worry about it because it's the whole point of it's
It's
to just
all
be like
automated.
hassle free. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, finding this futuristic startup and being this underground music artist, content creator, and bringing the real world to VR at this point, how do you manage all this multidisciplinariness in your life?
Back to the brain thing 5 whatever years ago, nonlinear thinking and nonlinear creative flows. That's the key. Honestly, I was doing something a few years ago, and I was trying to do a project, and just due to life and scheduling, I was being interrupted. It's like music. When you sit down and make music, most music, you sit down and you make it from point A to point B, no interruptions. You know what I mean? What I found is that I was being interrupted like every 3 minutes to 15 minutes. Stuff was just horrible. And it came down to this moment where I was like, I'm either going to now fail at what I've been doing, it's over, or I need to figure out how to adapt. And then I remembered, this is so bizarre, but I remembered a friend that lived with us when I was little, and they were from China. And his name was Sung. And he said that his dad would make him play 5 chess games at the same time in different rooms. And that he would have to, throughout the day, go and make a move, go to another room, make a move. So it's very much a non-linear type of thing. So we're just very much conditioned to be like, it has to be this way or not at all. So I was like, I need to figure out how to do this non-linearly. And that was just out of necessity for music projects and things like that. But then I found that the longer I did it, the more I could do, because everything feeds everything. It's not, I'm doing music today and I'm doing technology tomorrow. The music is going to help creatively open me up for the technology tomorrow, and the technology is going to open up. It's all connected. You just have to kind of like remember where the positions are. And so I started to really focus on like nonlinear creativity. And I have another friend. He's a producer in Amsterdam, and we work on a lot of stuff. He's phenomenal. He does stuff with Diplo and Sia, all these people. And the way he approaches this, it's more like the pop side or EDM side, is he approaches it like, let's get this piece locked in. Let's jump to this piece. This piece would be a good bridge. Let's put the bridge here. So it's kind of stepping back. But I also believe nonlinear thinking, nonlinear creativity is the sole solution to this AI fear. Is that AI is based upon like a linear model of thinking and productivity from humans and the data that we feed it. And it would only be as creative as we allow it to be or whatever. If humans now can evolve into this non-linear thinking mode where you're reading a little bit of physics here, math here, music here, and you piece it together, you're going to find that your brain it's not conditioned to that simple linear thinking mode anymore. It's like ping-ponging everywhere. And that is where like crazy innovative things can really flourish. So like personally, I believe that is the trick, at least for me, is that non-linear thinking is the way to approach everything. Is like, that's how you do it. So I kind of I had no choice but to develop it. And then the more I developed it, the more I found that this is like phenomenal and it helps every aspect of my life. So that I would say nonlinear thinking and processing.
That's awesome. That was an amazing answer. And it made me think too, I love all kinds of genres of music, but I have been trying to write music for a long time. And I used actually ChatGPT earlier on this year to help me come up with ideas too. And I had this idea for one song that just kept coming to me, and I've actually just added to it over time. Yeah. It was one of those things where at one point, I know a lot of popular songs have been using like horns or kind of random instruments to kind of throw the curveball to people. Right. I was like, okay, I have an idea for a horn I want to add to it. The flow comes from this old-timey crooner song, but then the lyrics come from a more EDM-based kind of thing. I'm combining together these different areas. Yeah.
And yes, so you are going to thrive, and you already know this. You're going to thrive and be the biggest thing in Web3 and where we're all headed, because people like you, people like me, people like who are listening to this podcast, we haven't had a space to exist until now. It's here now, finally. So my biggest struggle as a musician and artist is that I have to constantly tone it down to fit into a box genre, whatever it is I'm doing, because I'm always my problem, which is weird to say, but in the music industry, my problem is I get too buck wild with it. I get too creative, too out of the box. So I have to bring it back down, right? Well, we're heading into a space now where that is the reward. We've already done the predictive modeling and everything else, but now we're heading into a space where tracks that have horns in it and EDM and all that, that is where we're going. And like, so
Mhm.
people that are listening to this podcast, as long as we're kind of like cohesive in what it is we're going after, I feel that the time coming it's ours. Like it is this crazy innovator mindset that is the future of what people in the world are going to consume.
And one idea that I had too is that I had planned out multiple albums ahead of time, kind of what I wanted to do from those albums, and each album kind of has its own theme or genre kind of
Yeah.
added to it. So one of them is more epic based because I love epic music. One of them is a little bit more rock
Yes.
based. One of them is more EDM based. And I just love how
Yeah.
you could experiment that way. And you might still have a
Mhm.
cohesive underlying theme, but
Sure.
the themes of the albums also make prevalent.
Exactly. And that is forbidden in the actual music industry. And like, I've been in the music industry forever, right? And you have to accept the fact that that's horrible. Like that is considered an absolute failure. But as an artist, that to me is what I want. That sounds fantastic. I want to consume that. But the industry has been built around certain things. And so it exists in a certain space, but we're all leaving. And like I like to tell people with Meloscene, I'm inviting a mass exodus for people to come away from the formulaic stuff if you want to come in and try stuff. So that is exactly, to me, that is art. That's creativity and pushing that envelope versus having to just adhere to the formulaic stuff, which that is a thing too. But people like on this podcast and with you, it's more like these ideas are wild and they should go somewhere. So I think like that stuff's fantastic.
And I'm sure we could definitely nerd about again on another recording or even just chatting. But getting to something that I ask all my guests, Chad, that I wanted to ask you is, what is a polymath to you?
I mean, a polymath to me is someone who, and this is like my own, I like to set little weird goals and check marks. A polymath to me is somebody who is a master in at least in minimum three different fields that are not necessarily related, even though everything is absolutely related, but I guess on paper, they're not related. So to me, a polymath is that. Obviously, I meet tons of people who do phenomenal things and they would say they're not an expert in anything and they're totally a polymath. But for me personally, I feel like I need to hit a level of expert. And that's what I want to be able to even consider myself a polymath. So I even me personally, I consider myself a polymath wannabe or a polymath in training or something to that
Proto-polymath is what I call it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So basically that's that's my own personal goal that I'm trying to hit, that I want to hit, is that to be considered an expert in at minimum three different categories and have some levels of success that are tangible, and mean something, you know what I mean? Like that help the world, I guess. But again, that's on me versus meeting people who are good at a bunch of stuff. I don't remotely hold them to the same like thing, That's my own.
Well, we always hold ourselves to a higher standard, I feel like, too. And
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's how it is.
Something I want to plug that I created is this idea of the multidisciplinary spectrum, where I have all these terms: jack of all trades, generalist, polymath, and it's all along this line. Because some people don't know exactly where they're aligned, like how much knowledge they have. Like, let's say I have medium amount of knowledge in many different areas. Well, then you're probably more of a generalist kind of level. But let's say you're a specialist with a wide range, and you're probably more T-shaped. And having that term identifier can help you feel a little bit more relieved with yourself, and also just understanding yourself more too.
I agree 100%. And at the end of the day, like to even and I understand that for me to even like go, for me, a polymath is who's determining these criteria? Like, you know what I mean? Like what is enough success before you accept that, yes, you're an expert in that field? It's completely arbitrary. But at the end of the day, that's where I was like, it's all about that innovative overall mentality of pulling from whatever sources you need to pull from in order to achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. I think that is like the real polymath spirit,
And some of the researchers talk about how contributing to that field of knowledge in some way. So like doing a PhD paper, for example, or coming out with a book or something that can be contributing to the greater whole is one way to kind of prove you're an expert.
Yeah.
Speaking of technology, AI, all these different things, do you use a second brain like we were talking about earlier?
Are you talking about second brain like a partitioned hard drive, or organically, or cloud-based? Or do you mean are you talking about are you talking about on a theoretical level?
So neither. Like it's one of those concepts where it's like you talked about earlier, mind dumping, right? The place where you would have your input and outputs, the place that you would mind dump, the place you collect all your knowledge and information, whether you're using Notion or a journal, like a paper journal, or even Obsidian, like I'm doing, like whatever.
Okay, so I mind dump into a few different things. I mind dump into books. I have books of journals that I dump the stuff out and try to solve these problems that I'm always kicking around in my head. If I solve the problem, then it gets upgraded into I'll graphic design something and maybe an architectural diagram to go with it. And then it'll go into a folder in an R&D thing for one of the many projects. But I definitely mind with music, it was a different thing. Obviously with music, if I mind dump, it's going to be immediately into a track and record it and kind of like get the ideas out. But for the bigger, more complex stuff, I have a bunch of shiny journals. Like they're like, I think they're for like junior high girls. I don't know, but they're shiny like gold and silver. And so I dump my stuff into those. So it'll be like, I need to solve this. I need to look at these type of like photon based, whatever, light waves. How do I do this? So I dump it into there. And then as far as like mentally goes, which was what I was referring to, is that I think everybody has the ability to kind of like partition, obviously, their mind into different types of modes of thinking. But that's a different podcast entirely. So yes,
not
journaling is
just a different tangent. Yeah,
right, different tangent for sure.
Well, and I just love asking too, because everybody's different, and since you're more of a techie as well, I just figured I might as well ask, because I've been obsessing over Obsidian the last month.
Yeah,
and I've also been using Notion for the last 4 years. I'm looking at Notion right now because I still use it for my notes for the guests on the show, that kind of thing,
right.
The database of people. Because I feel like if you can get as much information out of your brain, sure, your memory may not be as strong, but at least you're a little bit more open and not having to manage everything all at once and use up resources.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and again, for me, it really does come back to like my nonlinear approach to things, is that if I sit there and I have an idea, if I just sit on that idea and I can't expand the idea until the next thing fits into the place, then I'm never going to be thinking non-linearly unless I write down idea 1 is this, idea 59 is this, idea 36 is this, and then step back and go, if you draw a line, that matches up. So that actually, these could have gone in a row. So like, I mean, at the end of the day, like it's whatever your brain needs to get the idea out, to get this thing built. You know, will you lose memory and stuff? Maybe. I mean, neurogenesis is a thing. Neurogenesis, you get that if you're, working in the yard. Like there's a million things going on in the brain. So I'm like, whatever you got to do, just get the idea out and expand it and build it. So sticky notes, software, whatever you got, man. Like I'm totally, whatever you got, use that.
I think what you're really pointing out there, and I want to highlight, is the idea of like fleeting ideas or fleeting notes. So we talked about the whole alpha wave earlier, like when you're going to sleep and you have a great idea.
Yeah.
Some of the most successful people are the ones that act on those great ideas the most, and you cannot act unless you write them down or journal them down in a digital journal too.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even in your dreams. Like I'm sure there'll be dreams where you'll solve problems in your dream. Then the second you wake up, you'll be like, I gotta write this down immediately or record it. Like if I don't have anything, I text myself all the time. Thing is, I have like programs for like notes and reminders, and I find myself just texting myself. I don't know if it's because there's something comforting about talking to myself through text. I mean, I'm sure it reads like a complete psychotic person, but it's like something about like, hey, you know what? We need to check this, like, but whatever you got to do. Yeah, you're right. Those fleeting thoughts, man, that's key.
Da Vinci did that. Da Vinci talked to himself in his notebook. So,
oh great!
That's fine for you.
So I won't be committed.
Yeah, I use Obsidian on my phone now, and I just like do a fleeting little note on there, and then I just like sync it with my computer or whatever. But yeah.
See, I love that, and I have programs that do that, but for whatever reason, I don't know. It's just, it depends on the day. It's like totally the day. Oh, today it's going in the journal. Oh, today it's a text. Today it's the program. I don't know, man. Like, and I used to be upset about it, or like trying to make it, but I was like, you know what, screw it. I'll just, whatever's, if I gotta write on a napkin, I'll write on a napkin. Like, and then I'll digitize them later. Ironically, I'll sit down and take them and digitize it all, so I have it in one spot. It's random.
Yeah, it's whatever works, really.
Right, totally.
Okay, try to think here. Where should we go with this? A lot of the questions here seem to be kind of going the same way. Where do you see the future of technology in general? I mean, we touched on that earlier, but I'm just curious, like, the next 5 years, where do you see technology growing? What are you most excited for?
That's a really good question. I just spoke on a panel last week and they asked the same question and I answered it more about like hardware. And I think we're going into an age of technology being less something you touch and access and something more that is a part of your life. So like you think about your computer and we touch it, PlayStation, you sit down, turn it on, touch it, your phone, you don't think about that. It's just a part of what you're doing. A lot of like what's going on in robotics and those things are available now and coming out. The intuitive stuff with AI and like where it's headed, we're finally going to get into that Jarvis future of just being like what we've all wanted. This I hate. It's weird is that I hate computers. I hate technology. I hate it because it's
Really?
garbage. It's garbage. It's absolute garbage. And I understand the stuff I'm making is probably considered garbage to people. I just know what we could have. And what we could have is that Jarvis collaborative partner to do things, everything. You know what I mean? So I think ultimately, no matter what happens, we're getting to a place where in the future, our grandkids will laugh at us that we had boxes. Everything was a box. We did everything with a box. And they're going to be like talking to the home. There's not like even screens are changing. I mean, we're going into a screenless movement. Like I think the days of accessing the old computer are on the way out. And now it's just more like things are embedded with things with all these different like, radar on a chip technology, mobile processing. It's just kind of going into stuff to where before we know it, the toaster is easily interactive and maybe it's like biometrically activated to it knows its use. You just kind of like touch it and then you go do your stuff and it's going there way more like right now technology, we have to really wrangle it. Even notes, Oblivion, you got to like type in the notes and get it synced instead of just being like, quick note, put this down, this down, this down. And then the thing would be like, do you want it in that order or are you talking specifically about this? Yeah, that sounds better. Okay. And then like when you need to access it, hey, can you pull that up on my phone? Like you have, like, it's just, that's where we're going. And that's because of just especially because of the mobile chipset boom that's happening. Now there's like another race. And then you combine that with obviously the AI ability. So now we don't have to like operating systems. Now it's like conversational. And then the third one that we're on the precipice of, still is going to be the quantum telecommunications. And once we have the quantum telecommunications up and running, game over. We're talking to beings and things at the hotel. Like it's just, it's magic. It's going to look like magic. So I believe that's where it's absolutely headed. And right now we're seeing essentially this is 90s computing of that next jump. So like even with like the headsets and things like that, those are the old 90s towers, but we're finally like going in that direction. So it's just seamless integration,
It's fascinating you mentioned the Jarvis because that's part of the reason why I was so motivated this last month with Obsidian because there are 12-ish plugins that integrate with like Whisper or any kind of OpenAI like ChatGPT stuff.
Yeah.
And while I have to worry about privacy because I still have like personal notes in there, so I haven't used really the plugins very much. I'm trying to prepare for it. I'm trying to get to that point where I have all my notes tagged and organized and connecting together because I love how it gives you like a graph where it connects all your notes visually, which is really fascinating. But one of the things that I've been trying to do is actually trying to get this proto Jarvis going because I literally looked at every article that talked about making your own Jarvis or making your own Katana or voice assistant in general, and I saved it. And I'm trying to see what the similarities are and where the problems are. What's stopping us from getting to that point? Well, is it the tool? Is it the AI? Is it the implementation, if you will?
Both. Actually, I had a talk last week with a guy. These are the company in New York, and their whole entire thing is their AI is bespoke to individuals. So basically, if you're with their company and what their company is building is that you would then either subscription or purchase whatever AI that is entirely just learning to you, how you function, how you operate, what you tell it, you teach it, you shape and mold it. If I were to take your AI, it would suck because it doesn't sync to how I operate. So that is actually this company it's based in New York that is entirely what there's several companies doing it, but it's entirely it's entirely about that individualistic thing. And that is the thing is that, like, what is it? Siri or whoever, that will be a thing. It's like Siri on my phone. And when it's AI or whatever phone you have will be for you, it'll be catered and it will learn from you And that's a program. That's something I'm implementing into our platform is bespoke, specific. This is your AI. And if somebody wanted to get it, it's really not going to do them a whole lot of good because it probably won't even talk to them because it'll be like, I don't know you. This is, I'm loyal to Dustin. So like it's here. Yeah.
I think one thing that's really important to mention too is that the whole local versus cloud dynamic as well, because all these tools, ChatGPT and all of them are all on the cloud base. And so you have to send your stuff to the servers. There are privacy concerns. I'm not a huge, big privacy, like, oh, I'm worried, like tinfoil hat kind of thing.
It's a thing.
But I am worried. It's a thing. And there are some, I think it's AutoGPT, HGPT as well, and Vicuna, and all these other like different models that are able to come locally on your computer. And now you can just have it trained, just internet.
Ours is local. Ours is local and cloud. But if you're not on the internet, you still have your AI. And you get to decide whether or not this AI is going to contribute to the bigger brain or not. But at the end of the day, this is yours. So I'm all about localized. Like obviously, it's going to need to be fed here and there. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's yours. I think that's a key piece.
That's why I'm so excited about Obsidian too, because it's literally all my data, all the articles that I care about, all the stuff that I've created, synced in. Yeah, but I'm not digressing. How was Tech Week for you?
Tech Week was exhausting, man. Like it's absolutely exhausting, but phenomenal. Like really, really, really phenomenal. And because we had been scrambling to get this hardware prototype out to the world, it's just an alpha. I was trying to get it out before the Apple announcement because I knew that once Apple made its announcement, then the buzz would be buzzing up again. So what happened was that we did the BBC feature like last month or whatever it was. And then Monday that dropped. And then Tuesday I was showing up at these different events and things like that. So it was wild. So lots and lots and lots of people were wanting to talk about where we're headed. The majority of Tech Week was the topics were kind of boring because it was AI, but it was all like topical applications. And I'm really interested in like the big crazy stuff. So they'd be like, you can sync your calendar and your contacts. Well, no, I'm like, come on, let's get to like the predictive capabilities of AI or whatever. So that was a little boring, but as far as the people though, everyone is like just buzzing about the possibilities of what is going on now. Finally, like we've kind of been in a plateau for a while. But it was great, man. It was fantastic. And I met absolutely a billion different people. I got to talk to like MIT, Harvard people and all that, all the way down to just tinkerers. It was fun, man. Like it was a lot of fun. Like you should come out for LA Tech Week next year. Cause like, it's just, lots of cool parties, obviously parties and events and stuff like that. But the people are very just innovative and like just everybody swapping ideas around. And that's like my favorite.
I'm desperate to move to like a more bigger city state, that kind of thing. I'm trying to go to Austin in particular because I know a lot of
Austin's got. I think they have a Tech Week too. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. That's one thing. That's something I'm going. Or Singapore. Singapore's another place I'm looking at. But yeah.
That's
one final question here before we wrap up.
That's for some fun, cool stuff. Singapore. A lot of people are going to Singapore. Like it's paradise. I mean, you kidding me? It's paradise over there.
It's like catnip. Yeah. For techies like us, especially. You got any more AI?
Right. You got some more AI or some crypto bros? You got any crypto bro for me? Yeah.
Want some Web3?
Hey, you got some Web3 over here? I got some Web3. I got some NFTs. Yeah.
Not a question I normally ask because I usually do just like the crazy amount of research. And I mean, obviously I did. But on a show like this, ironically, is there something that an area of knowledge you have that we haven't touched on yet that you possess?
There is, and I did remember this question. The problem is I would talk about it all day long, but I'm afraid it will confuse my investors because it has to do with parapsychology.
Okay.
It has to do, I'll just say, okay, how about, so, I've been studying this since I was probably, I guess you could say about 11 years old. The way that I view it is that obviously in science, we can only measure things based upon our five senses. But if you were to approach our five senses as peripherals to a very complicated computer, we are really, really limiting what it is we don't see and know. It's like we obviously know that we don't see outside of the visual spectrum. And if you were to get the tools to see outside of the visual spectrums, we start seeing all kinds of bizarre things that are inexplicable and all that. Oxford has an entire parapsychology department that has done the craziest experiments. And a lot of it points to basically I guess you could say like almost like data wash of the human mind and what it's able to produce and solve and do. Kind of goes back to like an ancient history sort of things, not ancient aliens, but like ancient history of where they have designs and things showing like germ theory and all these different things that did not exist until we invented something for the eyeballs to see it. So everything we do has to be, we have to see it, hear it, touch it. You know what I mean? So what I'm interested in is all of the different things that are reported countless times over and over and over that have to do with, I mean, the funny thing about it is the government, they've literally released these files through Freedom of Information Act of what the mind is really able to do. They don't know how. They can't measure it because we haven't invented the thing yet. So like basically like, a couple hundred years ago, whatever, germs to most people did not exist. They knew something was bad, whatever. It wasn't until somebody took the right set of lenses and looked at something with their eyeballs. And then they said, oh, guess what? Today we have germs. They exist now. They were always there, but it was just like this thing, right? So I believe there are a lot of those happening around us that we're not going to have the tools for another 100 years to solve it. So I study a lot of stuff having to do with the Fox Mulder sort of like, what is this remote viewing type of stuff? And I am working on prototype development for tools that allow for us to explore these different energies that, and a lot of times what happens in the scientific communities gets written off as nonsense. And I get it. I understand. There's a lot of crazy people out there that are like, my grandma has been dead and she watches TV with me. I get it. But there are a lot of things that have been recorded and over and over and over again that get written off simply because they cannot be figured out. And so I am very motivated. A lot of what I do is motivated to solve a lot of that stuff and creating the tools that allow for it. So some people would say it would fall under parapsychology, paranormal stuff, but usually it's just ghost hunters and people with recorders, or demonology or ancient history and religions. But there's patterns, and I'm obsessed with patterns, and I find them everywhere. And I think that people need to accept the fact that we're missing a lot of data. And then definitely, we accept that we need to build some tools to find it. So I would say I probably have more knowledge in that field than I do in technology. And probably pretty close to how much knowledge I have in music, just because I've been trying to figure it out since I was a little kid.
Something you're fascinated about too. And I love nerdy rabbit holes like that. That's why I asked that question. So I knew something had to come from that.
Dude, it drives me insane that we are the most limited creatures. Like, we cannot see jack. Like, a cat and a dog have a larger visual spectrum than us. So if we're sitting there and our dog or cat is like looking around the room, we're just like, they're stupid. I'm like, well, I mean, they have a higher sensory.
Maybe we're stupid.
Maybe we're stupid. We have, you know what I mean? And I'm like, why don't we look into that? And I've read tons of these papers and reports from Oxford and different universities and even the CIA. And if they're using these tools regularly for their work, but it's written off by the scientific community, there's a huge disconnect. And I'm going to take advantage of it. So if this particular group isn't going to move on it, and meanwhile governments are doing it, I'm going to go down the middle here. I'm going to design what needs to be designed in order to discover it, and then see how we can use it for, finding germs.
Well, and that's the entrepreneurial mindset, I feel like, as well. So wrapping up here, where can people find you online?
I just go to Chad Gerber on Instagram, Instagram.com/Chad Gerber. You can Google Woodrow Gerber, but most updates are going to be through my Instagram, and then obviously Meloscene.com. So it's MELOSCENE.com. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's probably going to be through just Instagram, because that's where I'm going to be posting nonsense and updates and things like that. Because it's just a lot easier to do when you're walking down the street and stuff like that. So I'll go with that. Otherwise, all the websites, woodrowgerber.com, Chad Gerber, I don't know, whatever. All that.
I'll have all those links on there. Don't worry.
Yeah, man.
That's one thing I love about the show.
Just sense it. Just turn on your computer and think, and you'll find it.
Meloscene.
There it is. There it is.
So that's a great call to action there. Go to Meloscene, go to Chad Gerber at Instagram. What could be a call to growth for the audience?
I'd say focus in on what it is you want to achieve and why. If you have an idea or something that you want to do, hone in on what is the point. And then that'll help you kind of figure out where to get started. Because I think a lot of times as people that are just like kind of all over the place, we grab everything. But try to figure out what is it you're trying to do. Forget the details, but are you trying to help people? Are you trying to fix something? Is there a medical thing you're trying to solve? Hone in on it. And then you'll find that if you just keep refocusing on what is the point, you can solve it.
Love that. Well, once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and Chad Gerber of the Polymath Podcast. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad you reached out.
Yeah, absolutely, man.